Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and another Wednesday, and it's on this day each week when Parliament is sitting anyway, that the Prime Minister traditionally takes questions from party leaders as well as other MPs. So let's go through the juicy bits from today. So first of all, before we get onto that, after making the offer of Brexit cooperation to Jeremy Corbyn last night, Theresa May has predictably come under fire from the hardline Brexiteers in her own party. The Brexit Secretary Stephen Barclay did have to point out that the reason Theresa May is reaching out across to Labour is because 35 Conservative Brexiteers refused to vote for Brexit despite being asked 3 times. Not that that kept them quiet. Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland, has appealed for Jeremy Corbyn to be wary of Theresa May's proposals. She made the point that whatever is agreed could easily be unpicked during the next stage of negotiation if the agreement passes. Now, that's because only the withdrawal agreement is legally binding, and that's not up for negotiation. And in actual fact, Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have a problem with that. The main bone of contention for Labour is the political declaration, but that's not binding. So even if she agrees to change it, whoever comes in next can just look at it and go, yeah, no. Or they can try and do it. They can just say, well, we tried to negotiate a customs union, but do you know what? They wouldn't give us a unicorn. So sorry, I couldn't get it. Now, also on the subject of the meeting with Jeremy Corbyn, the Daily Telegraph front page was naming the ministers who allegedly opposed this move, suggesting that a majority of cabinet were against Theresa May offering talks with Jeremy Corbyn. But all it did in my eyes was just to show how much the cabinet was dominated by Brexiteers, in stark contrast to the wider parliamentary party. But as I say, that's assuming it's even true. The Prime Minister, when asked about it, didn't flatly deny it, but she did imply that it wasn't true with the phrase, "Don't believe everything you read in the newspapers." Of course, the absolute lack of a denial was a little bit odd. Usually Prime Ministers are very keen to clearly state that a majority, or preferably all of Cabinet, were totally behind a plan. So my take on it is that we can't say it's definitely true. Not only is this newspaper not above lying, especially when it doesn't name its sources, but even if they did ask a minister, so from the newspaper's point of view, they're totally genuine about it, that minister may be lying. So my instinct is that it might be true. It might be true that a majority of cabinet were not in favour of this plan. Anyway, in order to show their anger, a group of hardline Tories are circulating a motion today to censure the Prime Minister and those in the cabinet they don't approve of. In other words, dock their pay. So the backstabbing continues within the split Conservative Party. Won't get anywhere, obviously, but another example of uncontrolled infighting in the government party, effectively. So in terms of the Prime Minister's questions themselves, so as leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn is always permitted to ask a number of questions first, and then other questions are allocated to other parties, and then other MPs get to have a chance. So he's focused today on the economic and social impact of the Conservative policies, noting that 8 million people in the UK are classed as both being in work and in poverty. He's obviously keeping his powder dry on Brexit topics ahead of the negotiations with May, which are taking place as I speak. Now, partway through the proceedings with the Prime Minister justifying her meeting with Jeremy Corbyn, Boris Johnson got up and left, making a show of being outraged to bolster his leadership credentials, no doubt. I mean, it worked for David Cameron. Every time he went along to a summit and didn't like what people were saying, he just used to get up and walk away, leaving the real world leaders to carry on talking about things without us at the table. So maybe he's taking a leaf out of his book. He was a mate of his at Oxford, wasn't he? I think. Anyway, Conservative MP Philip Lee did note that a poll suggested 58% people in the country are wanting another referendum, to which the Prime Minister said that it had been rejected in the House. Well, I imagine Parliament at that point were thinking very loudly, well, so has your agreement, Mrs May, but you keep still pushing that. But anyway, and unlike the people's vote, of course, she hasn't encouraged her MPs to vote against it. Then Stuart Hosey of the SNP warned about the Brexit trap of May's offer to Corbyn. He asked if Theresa May had been leader of the opposition, would she have walked into such an obvious trap? Now, the thing is, of course, in this, Jeremy Corbyn can't refuse. You know, if he does that, then May sort of wins because then he is the block to Brexit. So he has to play it smart, but I have no confidence that he will. he did come off very badly. So when Theresa May's deal was voted down, I think it might have been the first time, and she pretended to reach out across the House, and then, Jeremy Corbyn refused to meet her. I said at the time, that was just stupid. He should have just gone in, had a talk, come out and said she wouldn't shift on her red lines. So he has to at least do that this time. But I don't think that's going to be quite enough because people are desperate for there to be no deal. So he has to act in such a way as the blame remains firmly on Theresa May and the Conservatives. As I say, it's not just enough to put it on Theresa May. He has to shift it onto the Conservatives. The problem is, from an electoral point of view, going into the next general election, whenever that is, it's not going to be Theresa May in charge. It's someone else. So actually just pinning all the blame to Theresa May, no good. Because then the next one will shrug it off and say it's all Theresa May's fault. And then Conservatives back on level playing field. So, and it's no good him blaming her red lines if he doesn't look like he's going to budge on his. And it is possible to do this, but like I say, he has to be sharp. Oh, shit. Anyway, back to the question itself. And I couldn't see it live myself due to work, but it was reported that when the Prime Minister said that Cabinet had made a collective decision to arrange the meeting, Amber Rudd, Philip Hammond and David Lidington, who were all moderate Remainers, apparently struggled to keep a straight face. Read into that what you will. The gloves were off from Conservative MP Dr Caroline Johnson, who warned Theresa May against the risk of, as she put it, ushering in a Marxist anti-Semite-led government. Now, I know Boris Johnson is anti-Semitic, as well as an Islamophobe, but I'm not sure he's a Marxist. I'm not really sure what she was talking... Oh, wait, she's talking about Jeremy Corbyn, that's right. Usual thing, isn't it? Anyway, the Prime Minister also replied to a couple of questions regarding the meeting by saying that she and Corbyn agree on a number of areas regarding Brexit. And as I said last night, her ploy, remember, is entirely about tying Labour to the Brexit process so that they lose as much support as the Tories in a future general election. So obviously she's trying to align herself with him or get him aligned with her. Kirsty Blackman of the SNP asked the Prime Minister to recognise that freedom of movement has been good for the UK socially and economically. The Prime Minister didn't disagree, of course, but she did stick to her good little Brexit girl line of saying that people voted against these things in 2016. Of course, that's not actually true, but it does highlight one thing. A number of people were saying after my video yesterday that maybe the Prime Minister is just simply abandoning the hardliners in her party to get her deal across the line. Now, were she actually doing that, then she'd stop adopting their arguments for Brexit and pretending the people voted for this or that or the other when what people actually voted for, all they voted for was to not be a member of the EU. That was it. And the fact that she's still sticking to their mantra, not hers, their mantra, means that she's not breaking out of their shadow. She's just trying to trap Labour. That's absolutely all she's trying to do. And if she can somehow con them into agreeing to get her withdrawal agreement through with a non-binding addition, which the next Prime Minister just removes, then, all to the better for her. Now, I'm not saying, as I say, she doesn't want to get her agreement forward. I'm sure she does. But her primary objective in this has to be to tie herself to Labour so that if she falls off the cliff, they all go down with her. Nick Bowles, the MP who spectacularly resigned from the Conservative Party on Monday, appealed to the Prime Minister to drop her red lines. The response he got from the Prime Minister was that she would approach the talks in a constructive spirit, which I would take as veiled language for she wants to give the impression that she's willing to compromise, but not actually compromise, just like she tried a couple of months ago. We'll find out what emerges later on, hopefully. And then finally, Rosie Cooper, a Labour MP who had been targeted for murder by a neo-Nazi, was commended by the House on all sides for her bravery and given a round of applause upon her return to the Commons after the trial. Now, although PMQs is usually the political highlight of a Wednesday, there are also at least two other major events going on today. So there's a cross-party bill being put before Parliament in an effort to legally force the Prime Minister to seek an extension if the alternative is leaving without a deal. And the Prime Minister herself, of course, is meeting with the Leader of the Opposition to discuss a Brexit deal, or at least pretending to. It won't just involve those two, however. It will receive civil service assistance, which it needs to in order to have a legally practical solution. You don't actually trust politicians to come up with something that would stand up to scrutiny in court. as well as a negotiating team of 3 other Labour MPs, which includes the shadow Brexit Secretary, Sir Keir Starmer as well. So updates on those when I know enough, hopefully at least one of them later tonight, but we'll have to see. So I hope you found this interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, and until next time, I'll see you later.